What a way to cap off an incredible year of sports. Miami pulls off the 9.5 point upset in the Cotton Bowl over the Ohio State University, 24-14. I mean, for a lot of people, Ohio State was the overwhelming favorite to repeat as national champions. And, well, Miami just spoiled that potential run. So we will not have a repeat champion for the college football playoff this season. And I said they're going into this year for Ohio State. I mean, with this 12-team format, with just how long the season is, it's not a sprint anymore. It's a marathon. Man, it is hard to repeat. So absolutely no shame on Ohio State here. That is a very challenging feat. This Miami team is starting to feel more and more like a team of destiny. I feel like they're building momentum at the right time. I think I said that in my last reaction video or my prediction video a couple of days ago that Miami is one of those teams. Look, the path to success, right? It's never linear. It's crooked, and it's been crooked for Miami this year. Strong start, win over Notre Dame, dominated Florida State, made a couple statements early in the season, then lost to Louisville, then lost to SMU, had people questioning them on a national level, and then they start to gain momentum in the latter half of the season. They had a very good November, right? I mean, they didn't have very challenging teams in November, but they had Pitt to end the season, who was a challenging team, and they dominated in that game, and they got selected to be in the CFP, and it was controversial at the time, but I think that we now know and understand why they're let in. This is a great team. This is a team that absolutely deserved to be in the playoffs from the jump, and you can see why, as now they're in the semifinals. Another slow start for Ohio State. And there are two things that I said going into this game that could possibly bite Ohio State in the ass. And it's number one, slow starts. And number two, how do you respond when you get punched in the mouth? Ohio State started slow in virtually every game that they had this season. And said going into this Miami game, they cannot afford to start this thing slow. Well, they did. They ended up being down by 4 touchdowns. They didn't score a point in the entire first half. They were horrible on special teams, a missed field goal to end the first half. You just can't afford that because, like Vanderbilt earlier today, this felt very much like a game where Ohio State was playing catch-up for the entirety of this thing. And that's not the situation that you want to find yourself in a bowl game. You want to have a strong start. Does it have to be perfect to begin? No, absolutely not. But you have to generate points. Ohio State felt very Denver Broncos to me in this game, where it felt like they kind of waited until the third quarter to turn this thing on. And when they did, it was just a little bit too late. Now, Miami, little critique on Miami here. Conservative Cristobal. I love Mario Cristobal. I think he's done a phenomenal job at guiding this Miami program towards a point of greatness. I think they have a great trajectory right now, and it's great to see because Miami is one of college football's premier programs. But sometimes when Miami gets a lead, Mario Cristobal gets a little conservative. And we saw it tonight, a lot of dip and doinks, a lot of handoffs, just trying to run the clock when Miami was only up by 14 or even 7 at some points. You gotta turn those Jets on. You gotta go for the jugular. And they did eventually. Miami had that game-sealing touchdown in the final minutes of the game. And at that point, with no timeouts left, Ohio State, they had to rush. Julian Sain had a game-losing pick, and that was it. So Miami got me a little bit nervous with the conservative play calling in the second half. I thought they were a lot better at taking risks in the first half. I mean, that first touchdown with the fake draw, Carson Beck, the fake draw, the pass, I thought that was beautifully executed. A lot of great execution out of Miami tonight. I just want to say that. But huge win here. I'm going to get into some of the stats here. I want to say, too, that this is a game where truly, your future first round draft picks showed up and showed out. I mean, cream rose to the top in this thing tonight. On the losing side, Jeremiah Smith was incredible. All right, we got to acknowledge that. 157 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. I mean, he was the receiving room for Ohio State tonight, which surprises me because this is a team that, I really thought had the best receiving core in the nation this year. Cardinal Tate only had 37 receiving yards. Brandon Ennis had 34. C.J. Donaldson, 31. And so with that triple-headed monster, I just expected more out of Ohio State's receiving room. Bo Jackson tonight had 55 receiving yards, 5 yards a carry, 11 yards rushing. 11 carries, not 11 yards rushing. So Miami really slowed down the running game of Ohio State as well. Miami played incredibly physical on the defensive side of the ball. And if you want to beat a team like Ohio State, that's what you've got to be. You've got to be physical. That's what Indiana was. They were physical. They were scrappy. And it kind of messed with Ohio State's psyche. Right? I mean, you saw it in the Indiana game. Like I said, how does Ohio State respond when they get punched in the mouth? They got punched in the mouth in this game, and kind of like they looked like in the Indiana game, they didn't really know how to respond because this is an Ohio State team that hadn't faced a lot of adversity at all this year. So, I mean, I even saw it in the beginning of the Michigan game. Michigan punched in the mouth a little bit, interception. They didn't really know how to respond. And then Indiana Challengeville game. They didn't know how to respond. In this game, it felt like Ohio State kind of just tucked their tail between their legs as well. So that was a big question of mine. Miami played extremely physical. They disrupted Ohio State's flow, and that was their key to victory. Of course, Mark Fletcher as well. Yes, he had 4.7 yards per carry, but he had 19 carries for 90 yards. He had crucial runs once again when Miami needed it. C.J. Daniels had 49 receiving yards. Keelan Marion had 36. Mark Fletcher had 25. Malachi Toney only had 16. So I expected a bigger night out of Malachi Toney. I'm not going to lie. But it was enough for Miami to get this thing done. I also want to talk about Julian Sayen's turnovers. We had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. It was those interceptions that proved costly. Kind of like I talked about in that Alabama-Oklahoma game a few weeks ago. A lot of these CFP games, there's an inflection point, right? There's that moment where you feel the turning of the tide. There's that moment where you feel momentum shift in a certain direction. And it was that pick 6 that Miami had in the second quarter that really turned the tide of this game because Miami went 14-0. That's a huge psychological disadvantage for Ohio State. When you're down 14-0, I don't think Ohio State's been down 14-0 at all this season. So you're looking up essentially the side of a mountain, and there's no chairlift if you're Ohio State. Now, the situations they're in this year, being down 14-0, I don't think they really knew how to respond to that situation, and just a pick 6 in general, that play in general just takes the wind out of a team's sails. Like there's no better way to crush your opponent's spirits than with a pick 6. And that's what Miami did. I mean, Julian Sayen was staring down Jeremiah Smith on that entire play, and it was sniffed out. It was picked off. That's what a great defender does. That's what a great defense does. And I want to talk about Julian Sayen for a second. Because while I love Julian Sayen, I think that he's a phenomenal prospect. I think Julian Sayen is a first-round pick. I think there's several guys on this Ohio State team that first-round picks. Julian Sayen, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, obviously. But we saw some flaws of Julian Sayen. I mean, he didn't have an electric game exactly against Indiana in the Big Ten Championship. But tonight, I mean, he just looked mistake-prone all over the board. That first interception, and of course the one to seal the game, he did not seem like himself he felt a little bit off. I don't think that he was exactly trusting what he was seeing. He wasn't going through his progressions correctly. He he just didn't seem as dialed in and smooth and meticulous as he usually is. It was very uncharacteristic for Julian Sayin, but he'll be coming back to the Buckeyes next year, and so I expect him, kind of like I was saying about Arch earlier. I expect Julian Sayin to really develop, really mold into a first round prospect next year. But this is one of those games, if you're Julian Sayin, where you look at it and you say, man, this is rock bottom. This sucks, and it's only up from here. And I believe that he will progress from here. You get him coming back next year. You get Jeremiah Smith coming back next year. For Ohio State fans, you should feel very optimistic for what the future holds. I will say, I think that this loss was very much needed for Ohio State's fan base, because just from what I was seeing in my own comment sections, I've been talking to Ohio State fans. If I'm being perfectly honest here, I think they got a little ahead of themselves this year. I think they started to get a little bit cocky. And I say that as an Alabama fan who holds his own fan base accountable for getting a little too cocky sometimes. Look, winning does crazy things, right? Look at the Chiefs fan base. Look at the Eagles fan base. Look at the Patriots fan base growing up. Look at Alabama. Look at Ohio State. Winning does crazy things to a fan base. And sometimes get a little ahead of yourselves. Get a little cocky. Get a little overconfident. I think that this loss was very much needed for the Ohio State fan base overall, just to bring things back into perspective. But it is absolutely not a loss that defines the Ohio State program. This is a team that just won the national championship last year. I think that they're still on a great trajectory. I know a lot of Ohio State fans don't love Ryan Day. I mean, I know I had my own questions when it comes to play calling with him tonight, but I'm still very much confident in the trajectory of this team and this program in years to come. It is absolutely one of the top 3 programs in America. But Miami. Let's talk Miami. Let's talk what this win means for Miami, because this is a team that has been parched, that has been starving to get back to the mountaintop since the late 90s and early 2000s. You know, I've watched documentaries, right? It's all about the U. Like we know the history that this program has, and I understand the fall off. I mean, my whole life, elementary, middle school, high school, Miami was an absolute clown show program. You know, not to quote Joe Judge by any means. It was a clown show program for years. But they made the right hire with their head coach. Mario Cristobal has been incredible. And you've seen this team evolve throughout the years. Right? I mean, when Mario Cristobal started, this was a very raw product that he needed to build into his own. And early on in his tenure, this team was very unrefined, very imperfect. I mean, I'm sure y'all remember that Georgia Tech loss back in 2023. I certainly do. Last year, 2024, they made incredible strides from 23, but still wasn't enough. They got left out of the CFP. And to this organization's credit, they knew exactly what they had to adjust and what they had to refine and enhance going into 2025. While they had the best quarterback in college football last year in Cam Ward, they had an electrifying offense. They were a finesse team. They had no defense at all. Secondary was piss poor. Defense overall was piss poor. They made staff changes on the defensive side of the ball, and they became more physical. They became more punishing. They became better at the line of scrimmage. They became better at disrupting offenses and generating turnovers, and that's exactly what they did tonight. And I want you all to know that. Ohio State didn't throw the ball away tonight. Miami generated those turnovers. That's what this defense has become. This is now a physical, ground and pound team. And if you want to win at the highest level, if you want to beat a team like Ohio State, I cannot emphasize it enough. You have got to be physical. You've got to be great in the trenches. Miami won the battle in the trenches tonight, offensively And defensively, they did a great job protecting Carson Beck against an incredible Ohio State defensive front. Mark Fletcher had some good runs tonight as well, so they're great on the offensive side of the ball. But defensively, they were physical, they were disruptive, they were getting in Ohio State's face, they were making them flustered. And like I said earlier, a team that had gotten punched in the mouth a lot. This was a huge culture shock for Ohio State tonight to get pushed around by Miami. And it's funny right now being immersed and engulfed in this whole conference talk right now. Everybody's talking SEC, Big Ten, Texas had a huge win over Michigan earlier, so that kind of de-escalated the whole Big Ten thing a little bit. But this is, a lot of people have been saying that the Big Ten is the best conference in college football. Well, this is a blow. This is a blemish right here because this is a loss to a lowly ACC team. I say all that from a place of satire, a place of sarcasm, because I don't believe in the conference bullshit. Like I said, going into this game, this was Ohio State against Miami. I don't care about the conferences. These are two great programs, two great, well-coached teams going against each other. I know Miami is coming out of the ACC. I know that there is a certain perception of them because of that. But I don't care. Tonight was not about the conferences. Tonight was about coaching. It was about execution. It was about toughness. It was about playing a full 4 quarters of football. And that is exactly what Miami did. One last thing that I want to say before we get out of here. I know it's New Year's Eve, so I'm sure a lot of y'all looking to get to Ryan Seacrest and New Year's Rockin' Eve here in a few minutes. Carson Beck did not turn the ball over once tonight. Miami won the turnover battle, which I did not expect to happen at all. I thought that Ohio State was going to win that and that was going to ultimately be the difference maker. But no, it was Miami who, in fact, won the turnover battle. Miami was also great on third down. They're 7 for 14 on third down. Ohio State was 3 for 10. So you can say that Miami was just better overall when it came to capitalizing on opportunities tonight. And Miami also did, if you want to pull off a 9.5-point upset, there's always 2 things you got to do. Number one, it's ideal to win the time possession battle. Miami had 33 minutes of time possession. Ohio State had 26 minutes and 40 seconds. And you've got to win the turnover battle. Ohio State had 2. Miami's defense generated those. Miami only had 1. And it was not on Carson Beck. I was expecting Carson Beck to throw a couple picks tonight against Ohio State's elite secondary. He didn't do it. So props to him for that. What a massive upset. What a way to cap off this 2025 year. We're bringing 2026 here in about 17 minutes. But from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank y'all. I want to thank all of you that watched me week in and week out. We started the season last year with full-on intensity. Of course, we had Michigan's upset over Alabama, and that kind of snowballed into what became a huge year in 2025 for the channel. We have very exciting things coming. Instagram's blowing up. TikTok's blowing up. YouTube is blowing up. This channel is growing rapidly, and it's brick by brick. And it's all because of y'all. So I just want all of you to know how much I truly appreciate your support here and supporting what I'm doing. I love it. I appreciate it so much. And I'm looking forward to an incredible 2026. We have a loaded slate tomorrow. 3 CFP games, which of course constitutes 3 instant reactions out of me. So you'll be getting reactions for the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and yes, the Sugar Bowl. But thank you for a great 2025. And 2026 is going to hold some very exciting things for the era. And I can't wait for y'all to be along with me on the ride. Thank y'all. Happy New Year's. Have a great night. Celebrate responsibly.